Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Teacher Talks. As usual, that it's the same time and the same day. And tonight we are going to have our 34th Teacher Talks live sessions. And tonight, as usual, we have another very important educator. And when he comes, we are going to start our live sessions, and I'm sure that it's going to be great and very educational, just like other sessions. And tonight we are going to have an educator from Istanbul Kültür University, and he is a part-time FLT instructor at Istanbul Kültür University, and he's a teacher trainer and he's a language advisor and a coach, and he is Doğuş Aydın. And when he comes here, we are going to start our live sessions, and I'm sure that it's going to be a really useful session. So let me look at him, that if he's here, we can invite him and we can start our conversation. Yes, he is here. We are waiting for him to join our session. Yes, he's here. Hello.
Hello.
Doğuş Hocam. Good evening.
Hello. Thank you. Good evening. Good evening.
It's great to see you here in our Teacher Talks live sessions. And before we start, I would like to say thank you to accept my invitation for Teacher Talks live sessions. And it's a great honor to have you here. And so, like this.
Yeah, thank you very much as well. I'd like to say thank you for having invited me as well. I feel really honored to be here with many of our colleagues who will listen to us and who are waiting passionately. It's nice to be here. It's really great to be on the 34th of Teacher Talks. And I would like to say congratulations, by the way, because of the contributions that you made for our field. It's a great feeling,
Thank you.
really.
Yeah,
and it has to be really hard. I think you struggled a lot to conduct such great Teacher Talks. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doğuş Hocam. I try to do it, and it's really great to hear these things from you. And Doğuş Hocam, if you are ready, we can start. And so our followers and the teachers, educators, they can join us later, slowly. So because it's really going to be nice and a long session. So Doğuş Hocam, I know you, but maybe others, they don't know you, and maybe they would like to know about you. So can you tell us about yourself, please?
Sure, I'll be happy. First of all, I can say that I have been working as an English teacher. That's my main profession, I can say that. I've been working as an English teacher for 13 years. And since I was going to university, actually. And as well as that, I have been doing my PhD, and I'm about to finish, actually. I completed my PhD. I'm waiting for the date for defense. And as well as that, I did my undergraduate degree in Istanbul University, then master's in Sakarya University, and now I'm doing my PhD in Istanbul Aydın University. And I have been also working as a freelance and part-time, let's say, foreign language teaching department instructor at Istanbul Kültür University. I'm teaching literature and language for juniors, for the third graders. And I have also my own company about English language teaching. I have a kind of small team. I work with a team of teachers and also assistants, and we generally teach companies also any age range, I can say, starting from 6, 7 till 50. And I conduct some private tutoring tutorial sessions, as well as group classes to companies, or TOEFL IELTS-based classes for academic English. That's actually, I can say that my aim when I started my PhD was that I always wanted to integrate both skills, because I always believe that an academic should have to be in the class, actually should be in the classroom, because in order to feel that atmosphere, you can make better of your academic career as well, about your research and so on. I've been dealing with many research, etc. And also, I've been a teacher trainer for 3 years, and I'm a certified teacher trainer by Pilgrims, 21st Century Teacher Trainer, it's called. And also, I'm a language advisor educator, certified by Kanda University in Japan. It's over for 1 year. It took 1 year, that kind of certificate program. And as well as that, I work as a coach and language advisor. I sometimes have some sessions, one-to-one sessions with my advisees or coaches, depending on the context that they have. It's a pretty relatively new term, by the way, for our field. As well as that, the last thing that I do, I can say, is that I'm a father of 2 kids, boy and girl, 3 and 1 year old, and that's my another passion, let's say, another ambition to make them grow up well, I can say.
Wow, it's a great one. It's a really great, experience about in teaching. So, my other question actually is about your experiences in teaching, but you more or less you mentioned about it. But would you like to add anything about your experiences in teaching?
Yeah, actually, I think that I just mainly mentioned about all kinds of teaching that I have. I mean, I have experience with students ranging from 6 till 50, 60 even years old, with some groups for some companies, or some kinds of many years ago I also was teaching in some kinds of groups in some courses and so on. That kind of teaching experiences. And for 2 years I've been instructing and teacher training. I've been organizing some kinds of training for teachers, or pre-service teachers, or in-service teachers all over the world. And these are main teaching experiences, I can say.
I see. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Doğuş Hocam. Doğuş Hocam, my question is about your favorite moment. So in your own education. So what was your favorite moment or experience in your own education? And this can be about your teaching time or your student time can be.
Yeah, it's a great question, but a kind of hard question, to come up with some answers. But I can say, like, for example, for me as a student, I can talk about some kind of milestones in my life, maybe, because they were the best moments of my life. I mean, as a teacher, because I have some interesting times in my life that changed my teaching or student career as well. First of all, if I start from as a student, I mean, in my studenthood, I can say that, for example, the most important time was when I went to Bodrum to work, seaside in Turkey, kind of holiday place. And my teacher, high school teacher, maybe he is here, by the way, he can be watching us as well. My high school teacher encouraged me to go to Bodrum for summer holiday, to work there, to practice my English when I was in prep class in high school, when I was just 15. And I didn't have any kind of job or anything like that. And I just went there, and I was going to stay there for 2 days if I couldn't find any kind of job. And I searched for 50 or 60 hotels, and finally I got a job, and I practiced my English. And that was the best moment of the feeling of being a student, language student, let's say, because it changed my life. And the best moment related to this was when I came back to Istanbul, and in my high school, there was a new English teacher, and he started to speak English with us, and I was the only person who was speaking fluently. That's why, that's also closely related to my teaching. That's why I wanted to share that experience of mine. And the second milestone, maybe I can say, maybe I changed the question, maybe. I'm sorry if I changed the question a bit, but I can say second one was when I heard from one of another English teacher who was reading the students, the pupils who could go to university from language classroom of our school, and I was not one of them. I think I was so much discouraged, but it made me push. I mean, it pushed me as well. But even though I don't suggest to any of the teachers to do anything like this, because many of our learners are demotivated with such things. And the third one about my teaching career as well, because I met with one of the greatest teachers I've ever seen in my life in a course where I was preparing for language, university. And he was teaching, and while he was teaching, one day he told us that when I feel that you are just off in the classroom. And when I feel that, I take you to somewhere else. He was a kind of he was a person who had a really high sense of humor, and he was taking us out of the classroom in our minds, and taking us back to the classroom, which made me feel that I like some kinds of teaching about the psychology, especially. And the psychology of language learning started in my mind. It sparked some lights in my mind, let's say. And as a teacher, the best moments were generally, I felt I actually termed this kind of labeled as feeding time as a teacher, when I got really great comments from my students. Some of them are even in my website, and also from my students who are pre-service teachers, prospective teachers. When I got some great feedback, that's the moment when I feel really satisfied. But as a teacher, maybe my first classroom, I can say, because there was a teacher who went to that classroom, and she was pregnant, and that was a company. There were 4 ladies. Some of them are still my friends, by the way. Maybe they can be in the room as well. And our teacher who was pregnant was there, and then after a while she couldn't go, and then she wanted me to go. Actually, she sent maybe 5 or 6 teachers who couldn't succeed, who failed to have that kind of communication with those students. And when I went there, I approved that I could become a teacher. I could become a good teacher or something like this, because students loved me, and getting that feedback made me feel really satisfied, and feel that I could do this job for all my life. Because I was never thinking of becoming a teacher when I started this journey, when I started my university. That's why I didn't even select, for example, teaching department, but rather English language and literature, Istanbul University. That was the reason I didn't, because my mother was a teacher, and I saw how hard and how difficult it was. But I didn't understand the passion in me, and I discovered myself. These were the best moments, I can say.
Nice, and great one. Thank you very much, Doğuş Hocam. It's a really great moment that you have it. Actually, I was, in the first time, I had no plan to become a teacher, but suddenly I found myself as a teacher, English language teacher. And now I say, thanks God that I became a teacher, because I really love my job, really, right now.
Yeah, I can see that from your eyes.
Thank you. And Doğuş Hocam, I would like to ask a question about your current business. Actually, you mentioned a little bit, but maybe you would like to add some more about things that you are doing. Can you tell us about your current business and what kind of things you are doing there?
Yeah, actually, I can say, as I said, I have a company, and I'm teaching. I still continue teaching, as well as that I'm doing I teach at the university. I lecture for prospective English teachers, pre-service English teachers at Istanbul University, as well as that I'm doing some coaching sessions. I'm conducting and coaching and advising sessions. And so these are related to what I said. Maybe I have already mentioned, but it is nice because there are some newcomers. Maybe it would be great to let them understand as well. And I'm teaching for academic examination and so on. And for the last few years, I have students from all over the world. That's something interesting for me. I have students from USA, even native speakers for academic writing, academic speaking, from Hungary, from Germany, from Japan, or some countries like this. By the way, I started online teaching actually before pandemic issues. That's why I was highly prepared for this process. For example, I always say to my students and the people who know me that I can show, here's my gadget. I even have such a gadget, for example, to strengthen my power, internet power, as a connection power, because I was prepared before, and I continued for almost like 4 years online teaching. I was teaching online when there was not screen share in Zoom, and there was no Zoom picture. I was just teaching on Skype. And we are doing such things, and also I prepare some kinds of research and academic things, stuff like this. And I continue like this. That's my current business. I do have many things in my hand, let's say. That's why it's pretty hard to follow up all, but I'm trying to do my best, let's say.
I see. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doğuş Hocam. And Doğuş Hocam, you know that, and nowadays, like studies on emotions and psychology of language learners and the teachers are gaining more and more importance, and as they suggest lots of implications about their well-being and academic lives, especially. And actually, I have a question, but it's really, you know, the very general questions. But as I know that you are focusing on, for a long time, language advising, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you please tell us about what is language advising?
Sure. Yeah, it is something relatively new field, but I would like to start because as you told me about this question earlier, and I just prepared something. And I would like to start by asking our followers, actually, and give a kind of break to let them freshen up with some ideas. And I prepared my mentee about it because I wonder what people think. Because as I'm doing the first, for example, advising thesis, PhDs, that I haven't realized any, by the way, master thesis. And as I'm the first graduate of language advisor educator course in Japan from Turkey, I would like to learn about our colleagues' ideas. That's why I prepared a mentee. If they can, it would be great if they can enter into the mentee. Maybe I can write from the comments.
Yeah, sure.
Mentee.com. Sure. And the code is, I just shared with all of you. And the code is 601808 and 8. Yeah. I'll be seeing your results. It's an open-ended, and you can just, it would be great if you could share your ideas about what language advising might be, or what language advising is. Maybe you're already aware with the term. That's why it would be great if you can share your ideas about it. What is language advising? What do you think language advising is, I can say? I'm sure that you will be all, able to see the screen, I mean, the question as well, if you enter into Menti. And let me wait some answers, because, you know, we always say for our students who will be teachers, activating schemata is really important. And trying, this is a kind of warm-up, brainstorming, and
I see.
As Piaget says, I mean, just kind of this kind of learning atmosphere always welcoming. So I couldn't get any answer yet. There are, I think, 17 people in our line now. Can you see how many people there are? I couldn't see actually. Maybe there I can.
It's like 20 or something like this. I'm just waiting. I'm also trying to code. You mean code here? No.
I got one. Help students to improve their language skills. Actually, this is, I can start with the definition as well. Language advising is not a practice of teaching in a way. It's based on learner autonomy and creating and fostering, promoting learner autonomy. That's why language advisors, as language advisors, we never attempt to help our learners to improve their language skills, but we guide it and we facilitate it with the help of some kinds of reflective dialogue. And that's why we do not directly teach anything. That's not tutoring or teaching at all. And I can say language advising is based on humanistic counseling and also coaching skills, because it is also referred to Kelly's micro strategies of language advice and language counselors. It can also be referred to in the literature. And we help them discover their own issues to take their control, to take the control of their own learning. And some of other colleagues, other friends shared some ideas like setting goals according to levels and guiding. We again never set goals because it is indirective, not directive. And we help them come up with their own goals. So we promote their autonomy. This takes, of course, weeks and weeks, but the most important, yes, it's a kind of supporting. Another colleague also wrote supporting. It's a way of supporting. It's a way of supporting their, to help them understand their, for example, the roots of the problem and the final destination. Through these language advising sessions, we try to create effective, aware, and autonomous language learners. And mainly language advising happens in self-access centers, by the way. Especially, for example, in Turkey, there is one, by the way. I mean, they were highly experienced about it, and they have already started with the project that they did with Kanda University in Japan. Ankara Yıldırım Beyazıt University has been trained by them, and they have already been doing great jobs as language advisors. They have their own self-access center in which some language advisors who do not work as a teacher, language teacher at all, serve as the language advisors to promote all, especially prep school learners, autonomous skills, learner autonomous skills. And I've been doing my PhD on this issue. One of the first PhD dissertation probably about group language advising, because mainly all over the world, language advising is held as one-to-one situation, especially as I mentioned in self-access centers, starting from Henry Holleg and Riley in the University of Nancy in France. But my issue, because that's probably the third study in this field, as group language advising with high school EFL learners. My study was conducted in 2 high schools in Istanbul, and they help with the help of powerful questions, empathizing, respect, genuineness. These are the most 3 important criteria for person-centered counseling, humanistic counseling, also revealed by Carl Rogers in 1951. And he just mentioned that the 3 core elements of advising skills are respect, empathy, and genuineness, and it's based on humanistic approach, not behaviors, etc. And it happens indirectly. We never give some kind of directions, and we call intentional reflective dialogue. The most important aim of the language advisor is to initiate, is to activate reflection for the learner, and they reflect themselves on their past and now and their future by creating some kind of best self, etc. That's why this is closely related to psychology of language learning as well. Emotions, motivations. We are not dealing with the language but how language can be learned by them. They're just struggling to find answers to this question. That's language advising related to coaching skills as well. For example, we use some tools from from coaching as well, because there is no term in literature as language coaching. And we just try to, by the way, this happens with the discourse. So discourse is very important of the language advisor. And we use indirective approach. We never tell them what to do, but we just, we might share some of our experiences, our intuitions about the learners. There are some language advising strategies. This is a highly broad field. That's why I try to limit myself.
Limited.
Say as short as possible.
I can see that.
Actually, So I hope I was able to answer your question.
It's very clear. It's very clear, Doğuş Hocam. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask another question about, learner autonomy. Especially these days. I mean, with the distance learning, it becomes, I think, really difficult to, how can I say, to make the learner autonomy. It's more, important. So, and in this case, what is the role of language teachers in learner autonomy?
Phil Benson, in 2001, in his book Learner Autonomy, I strongly suggest, if any of our colleagues are interested in that, he categorized the approaches of learner autonomy, and he said teacher-based approaches and resource-based approaches and curriculum-based approaches. That's what we do actually. What we can do in our classrooms by changing the curriculum first. I mean, the most important point is to let each teacher create their own curriculum, but it's not possible in Turkey, unfortunately, right now. In Finland, for example, I have a lot of friends who work as a language advisor in Finland, and they have the possibility to be able to change the curriculum and to be able to decide, to determine their own curriculum in each classroom, and that gives the freedom to be able to control their own.
I see.
But as a teacher, what we can do is to guide, facilitate, and coach and make our students reflect with the help of scaffolding, but without indirective approaches. I mean, we need to let our learners control their own learning by
I
not
see.
assigning homework, for example, by letting them assign homework themselves with peer interaction, peer work, for example, pair work or group work. And also we can, for example, let them choose what they would like to choose. I mean, autonomy of choice, we call. And in our curriculum, we can also let them select what they would like to read. For example, if you want to make them understand, make them read one novel or poem or any kind of literary work, you can let them choose what they would like to read in the classroom by giving at least some limited choices, maybe, because that can create some chaos in the classroom otherwise. But if you do so, these kind of choices can make our learner improve their autonomy. I would like to say I've been interested in autonomy, especially in my PhD. I've started to be interested in, and my PhD actually journey is quite interesting about this issue. I decided to do my thesis on language advising because I just actually started my business, my company, with the brand name Doğuş Aydın Language Coaching, because I was certified to be a language student coach from Kadir Has University. And after I got that, and I was thinking how we could coach students. But coaching that I knew was completely different from what exists in the literature. That was quite funny. I can say coincidence, let's say, because I suppose that I knew what coaching is, but I didn't know anything about it actually. And then I was just checking the literature to find my thesis topic, and I realized that wow, that is what I was always saying. There is language advising, just the name is different. They do not call it as language coaching. And then I was interested in autonomy, but I realized this also starts with the parental attitudes. Apart from teachers, maybe there can be some. Most of us are parents, that is fathers, mothers. That's why I can also say that it starts from the parents to let our children decide independently. Baumricht, a very important scholar in this field, designed a kind of parenting styles, and she came up by saying there are three parental styles: democratic, flexible, and authoritarian. As you know, in Turkey, for example, here in Turkey, we used to have many authoritarian families, never let us what we want to do, etc. But now there are many flexible parents who do whatever their children want to, but with sensible and logical, reasonable rules, we can let our learners decide what they would like to do. And I realized that I'm trying to do my best as a parent, because I realized that we have some roots in our maybe genius, because my daughter always says, for example, when I ask, how did you learn? Who taught you this? And she says, I learned by myself. That's the most important point of learner autonomy. That's why I think it starts from the parents. As a teacher, as I mentioned, autonomy of choice, letting our learners control their own learning. For example, you should never create rules by yourself in the classroom. It can be so much utopia, but I tried it. I have been trying it for 13 years. I always saw that it works. You can create rules with a kind of interaction, with a kind of dialogue, and you can write down the rules in the classroom at the beginning of the year. I'm sure most of you as a teacher do. And we can teach them how to catch fish. We shouldn't give them the fish, it's a very common saying about it. So we have to give them more responsibility in the classroom, in classroom tasks. We shouldn't give them everything. We should let them discover and reflect on themselves, their teaching and so on. And the role as a guide and facilitator will help us promote our learners' autonomy, I can say.
I see. Thank you very much, Doğuş Hocam. Doğuş Hocam, there was a question. It was about the name of the book that you mentioned just now. Is it possible to say the name of the book again?
It's a very famous one, actually. The one who is interested in autonomy can know. Its name is Researching Autonomy. Phil Benson. I can also write if you want on the comment, because I can see here. Phil Benson.
Yeah, sure.
As far as I know, Researching Autonomy. Learner autonomy, but I couldn't be sure of the name of the book right now. I want on it, I can say, in 2001, and there is second edition, as far as I know, in 2011.
I see.
This is the broadest, I can say, resource for learner autonomy and teacher autonomy as well.
Phil Benson, Learner Autonomy,
yes, Phil
2001 and
Benson.
2011. Okay, it's a great, I'm sure it's a great resource about learner autonomy. And there was another question that I need to ask. This live session is now recording, so you can watch it whenever you want after we finish the session. There was a question about, are you recording it or not, something like that.
I see.
That's why.
I saw some more questions, by the way. Identify difference in your skills. There's another one, I think, and there is how to improve students'
I saw
writing
it,
skills
but
for
it's
IELTS.
yeah, it's about the writing skills.
Yeah.
But here, how to improve students' writing skills for IELTS. I was planning to ask you it through re-answering our question, but if you want, you can answer it right now, no problem.
Sure. Yeah, I just realized that's why I wanted to talk about it. I can say, for example, when you want to improve your students' writing skills for IELTS, you have to. The most important thing is that writing is a kind of composition, like Mozart and Beethoven, as they wrote. They are writing and they are getting some feedback, internal feedback or external feedback, and then they change the way that they write. So the key point to improve our learners' writing skills is with the help of feedback of the teacher. And as well as that, of course, we have to talk about the elements of writing in IELTS, and we can also talk about, for example, like some basic elements like cohesion, unity, and objectivity, clarity, and maximums of communication as well. And the best way to go is what I do in my sessions, I can say, is to introduce how the writing can be done. I mean, the basics and the elements and the process. For example, how you start brainstorming and then first draft, and second draft, revising, editing. And after that, feedback is the best point because you cannot do any other things, I can say. Firstly, you can let your learner reflect on his or her writing that he write and consistently, of course, maybe weekly. And then you can come up with feedback and change your learner's idea about writing skills. And you can also, this is integrated skill, all kinds of IELTS and TOEFL, all good academic examinations. That's why we shouldn't disregard the importance of listening, reading, and vocabulary and grammar issues about writing skills as well. And while we are giving feedback, we shouldn't ignore them as well. And we can continue that. I hope this person is live and this question.
Yeah, I think it's very.
It's a very broad question. That's why I couldn't come up with direct answer maybe.
But thank you very much for answering the questions. I'm sure that the one who asked the question, I can get the necessary information from your response, Doğuş Hocam. And can I move to the next question?
Yes, there's one more question.
Okay.
There is one more question. If you want, I can talk about it, or however you
sure,
want. You are the moderator, so I shouldn't. I don't want to interrupt.
I have just thinking about how can we help students overcome language barriers, Doğuş Hocam, in advising. Yeah, sure, of course, Doğuş Hocam.
I can say, for example, the key points, the most, let's say, visited issues about language advising, why language advisors visit us is, for example, language barriers, motivational things, and the problems towards language learning, and so on. And we can help students overcome language barriers by making them discover their root of the problem. This can even sometimes be related to their affective factors or psychological factors from their backgrounds, from their relationship with their parents. But I can recommend one tool, for example. That's a really nice tool, simple, so I believe that it can be helpful now if I tell. For example, you can let your learners, you can share with them a kind of mind map. In the middle, you can just write your perspective. And you can ask what people think of this language barrier or language learning process. So it depends on the context. And you can ask your learner to come up to search for friends or people or relatives' ideas about this language barrier issue or language learning process. This is a nice way of reflection as well, because the learner can reflect on how other people learn the learner can consider how other people can learn by reflecting on his or her past experiences or recent experiences, I can say. So it will be really useful. This tool, for example, we call it like changing perceptions, is really useful. But apart from this, you should know, of course, language advising with using powerful questions, especially how and why based questions, because how questions are the most powerful questions that can come up with more reflection, and why is the second one in the pyramid of triangulation of the questions pedagogically. That's why you can come up with some how questions to your learner, and they can again reflect, or you can try to discover the root of the problem. What is the root of the problem? And because language barrier is always affected by some other issues related to language, some past experiences generally. Maybe one teacher told him or her that, oh, you cannot learn a language, you're hopeless. If a teacher said something like this, unfortunately many of us may have experienced such a thing, we could come up with some ideas. We can just direct their ideas to that moment, and to find out that problem by digging. We call it kind of digging, and the learner can come up with some results, ideas to fix the problem. Some techniques can be, for example, stream of consciousness, to make our learners write about their feelings towards related to this language barrier every morning or every afternoon, but not evening, because if you let your learners write in the evening, especially about psychological issues, they cannot sleep because they can always think of such issues in their mind. This would be a big problem. Even counting sheep will not help them have enough sleep, let's say. But stream of consciousness, keeping diary, letting them keep diary by writing down these negative emotions, will help them overcome this barrier in time, because they will start to realize that they are writing less negative emotions in a month or in 2 months. But it is not that easy. Of course, as I mentioned, during this journey, you can, if you are not really, I can say, experienced language advisor, there could be some kinds of problems when, for example, when you challenge the values, etc.
I see. I mean,
because
it
I
takes
just
time.
answered, by the way, from the perspective of language advisor, not as a language teacher, because the question was like this.
I see.
As a language teacher, it could be different, I think.
Of course. Thank you very much. But you mean it takes time, I think, to do it?
Sure. For example, I have now 5 advisors and coaches, and by the way, I have to say that if it's a kind of trauma in psychology, they call it if there is a trauma, it's never ending. It never ends, but it is actually, it can be passive, and they can even if such emotions, such emotional factors rise up in our brain, in our mind, in our consciousness, let's say, if we know how to assess them, how to control them, how to make them passive, because this is the help of psychological therapies that we take, we won't have huge problems about it, I can say.
I see. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doğuş Hocam. And if it's okay, now I think I can move to our questions. I mean, like you just mentioned about the learner autonomy. It's about the role of language teachers. And my next question is this: do you think there is a correlation between teacher autonomy and learner autonomy?
Sure. This was even one part in my thesis, I can say, because that's one of the most important perspectives. If we, as I mentioned, even parental attitudes affect learner autonomy, and teachers' autonomy is really important. And David Liddell, who is one of the pioneer leading figures in learner autonomy, says in one of his works in, I think, 1990, that teacher autonomy is a kind of is the way that learner autonomy is presupposed. That's why they are highly correlated with each other. And Stickler Riley also mentioned about such works and say that, for example, teacher autonomy, because this actually clarifies how the teachers are grown up or how the teachers are trained. That's why such preconceived judgments and or such styles that were attributed to them by their own teachers in the past can also be related to their autonomy. So this kind of teacher autonomy is an important part. But the other parts which are related are, for example, institutional impositions. Many of our schools have problems, difficulties with management or such, because they cannot control their own classrooms because of curriculum processes, curriculum constraints, impositions, and institutional, maybe ministries, institutional prescriptions. They cannot come up with their own control in their autonomy and as a teacher, which directly reacts, which is directly correlated with learner autonomy, because as a teacher, if we are not autonomous enough to control our own curriculum, there are many studies which show the same results, by the way. Our learners' autonomous level can be affected from it negatively, I can say. So, as it is in Finland, for example, free curriculum is suggested, recommended. But if we do not have, even if we don't have, I am always the kind of person who is optimistic. I can say that as a teacher, we have to find ways. This is our job, to find solutions. That's why we can think of what we can do to finish this problem, for example, by at least by touching the curriculum to let our learners control their own learning, I can say.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much, Hocam. So, but it's not an easy thing to do, I think, closely. It depends different aspects, as you mentioned.
Sure. It's not so easy. It's too hard. But first of all, we always say it's, again, I will appeal to a little bit refer to psychology, but I can say there are some psychology theories saying that parents cannot change their children if the trauma that they have was not fixed.
I see.
Even if it's not completely fixed, if they couldn't learn to deal with, control their own trauma, that's why it is the same thing. If the teachers cannot find their issues, root of their problems, they cannot reflect it on their students. That's why, as a teacher, we have to find our constraints. So teacher autonomy is not, as I mentioned, just from it's not determined by institutional constraints or limitations, but rather also about, as a teacher, our parental attitudes, our parents' attitudes towards us. That's why we should find our own issue and to let our learners control their own learning. I always say to my students, maybe some of them are here as far as I see, I always tell my students a kind of motto I have. We are not policemen, we are not policewomen, but we are teachers. That's why they always say, for example, when I ask a question, how can you motivate your learners, or how can you create a kind of, how can you let your learners control their own learning? They always come up saying, I can just assign them, or I can just give them lower marks. Actually, as a teacher, it doesn't work. Even if you grade them with a lower mark, even if they say that it was really nice, they wouldn't tell anything good about you in the future as when they start their career, etc. But the most important thing is to motivate them with different tools, not with some prize or whatever I can say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Doğuş Hocam. Yeah,
think
simply,
also,
teach simply.
This is our motto in our class at university. That's why they remember it.
Of course, it's really true. Think simply, teach simply. It's true. So, Doğuş Hocam, my next question is, can you give us some practical tips to increase or create motivation in different age groups? This is also very important in language learning.
Yeah, sure. I can say I also actually created one mentee for our teachers, for our colleagues.
Sure.
If it's possible, we can also share our ideas. We can learn because, you know, learning is always a kind of collaboration. This is a kind of collaborative learning. I'm doing mentoring too, by the way, even if not so widespread. And there is, we call it reverse mentoring and relational mentoring, and we learn from each other when we are mentoring, even if one of them is more experienced. That's why Menti helps it. I also sometimes learn from my learners, even from pre-service teachers. So
yes,
if you don't mind, I would like to share the code and
Menti,
and see our friends' great ideas, insightful ideas on Menti. I also shared the code.
Yeah.
I shared in comments. I think they can see.
Yeah.
Yes.
They can.
Did the code come, by the way? Code is 8652118.
18, exactly. Okay.
If they enter, they can also write their ideas about how they can communicate, how they can motivate their learners. And by learning on their ideas, we can construct ours as well. One of the audience, one of our friends told that by giving them positive feedback is really important point to increase self-esteem. So this belongs to Carl Rogers' theory as well. Self-esteem and self-worth are really important criteria for our learners to increase their motivation. And really giving positive feedback is a very good idea. Another colleague said establishing clear goals.
Yeah.
This is a great way, and it's a kind of outcome based, you know. This is a very practical tip as well, because establishing clear goals at the beginning of the semester by creating our own syllabus and letting our learners see the syllabus. But actually, for a more autonomous classroom, I suggest creating a syllabus together with the help of your learners. It would be great. Also making them aware of, one of them wrote, making them aware of their strengths. Yes, you know, in business that's called SWOT analysis. SWOT, strength, weakness, and opportunities and threats. Generally, let's not say generally, but many teachers focus on weaknesses of the learners. But rather, I always say that we have to focus on strengths of our learners to make them feel more self-efficacious, which would increase their motivation as well. And giving example, one of them wrote, by the way, there are many coming up, giving example from their own lives. This is a great idea, I think, giving example from their own lives. As a teacher, experience sharing is always useful to be a role model. And being a role model is an important criteria to increase our learners' motivation. For example, to increase our learners' motivation, we can create, I can also refer to some ideas, sustained silent reading activities. I'm sure most of our colleagues have already known about it. In sustained silent reading activities, we can share, for example, 10 minutes, 15 minutes for our learners, same period, during, for example, at some specific and consistent intervals, and we can read together. By being a role model, we have to read as well with our learners. That's an important point, by the way. And giving kind of examples and being role model and creating such sustained silent reading times will be really useful for letting them create their own habits in reading. That would be useful. By inspiring them, they are so closely, one of our colleagues wrote, inspiring them. We have to inspire, Teachers are the biggest inspirers, you know. I mean, they're leaders also. I'm going to get an education from higher enders about teacher leadership next week. No, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, sorry. And I wish I could learn much more things about inspiration, and I would have more, but I can say teachers needs to touch students, touching human. That's important point to motivate our learners. And giving them small prizes. There are many studies showing that prizes do not work. But I rather think that, I mean, you can give prizes to your learners, but by not showing that, by not making them prize addictive, because that could cause some problems. They made the research, for example, in 2 classrooms. In one classroom, all students were given a kind of chocolate or a kind of prize after they did their assignment. But the next classroom, they didn't give anything. They were not given any kind of present. And first time, after the first trial, the classroom that was given a chocolate gave better results. It was more effective with that class. But after a while, it was seen that the classroom without chocolates or without any prize worked better. That's why in long term, actually, it wouldn't be so good activity to make our learners prize addictive, but we can make our learners feel that they are, to increase their self-worth, they are important, they are cared, by giving some minor things, because they are thought by others, they are considered by other teachers. But as I said, there's a balance and not prize addictive, but this should be like, even if some of the learners do not do anything, sometimes giving prize to all your learners in the classroom, even if some did not answer correctly, would be great to make them feel that they are important, because we always look for self-esteem and self-worth among the others, especially among our peers. And the other one, by making them remember that making mistakes are quite natural in language learning process. Yes, I call it structured awareness raising, I can say. By the way, about language advising, one of the guidebook belongs to Cato and Maynard, and my sentence, let's say item was taken from this book, retrieved from there, about language advising. If you would like to have any more ideas, you can read the book written by Cato and Maynard, Satoka Cato and Joe Maynard, and I was also educated by them in this process. And we should let our learners mistakes are natural, but how can we do it? I always like doing it at the beginning of the semester, not just with students, with the parents as well. If you work with young learners, etc., because parents are not mistake sensitive. In one of my classrooms that I experienced last week, for example, student was coming up with a very high level of papers, writing papers, let's say, which I realized that it was not his work. And I told, and by the way, parents were also educated about it. And I told why he does not do he does not make any mistake. And they came up by saying, be corrected. Do not never ever correct your student. Just give instructions as a parent. So mistakes are not really natural or welcoming by the parents, by the students. But at the beginning of the semester, if we can make it, for example, I was sometimes making in my classrooms that when my students, especially young learners, when my students made mistakes, I was making everyone applause. But of course, the tone is important because it could be humiliating if you make it wrongly. But I was really sincere that some students made mistakes, and I liked it. I mean, let's clap our student, our friend, because he made a mistake. So with your own behavior, with your own attitude, if you support it, even unconsciously, because our unconscious is important here, I believe our learners will feel, and it will motivate them. And clear instruction was also talked about, clear goals, clear instruction. It would be, of course, motivating. Self-reflection. But this is also tough. We should let our learners reflect themselves. And meaningful context. Knowing them crucial too. And giving responsibility. They're all lovely ideas. And really, our colleagues, our friends came up with many different ideas I couldn't read. And I can talk about some motivational theories, though. For example, Ryan and Degri, who are the founders of self-determination theory. I think most of you can be familiar with that theory. I really love it about motivating our learners. And they call that in self-determination theory, there are 3 important crucial elements. One is giving autonomy of choice, as I mentioned earlier. Let them choose what they would like to do. Let them choose what they would like to read. Let them choose what they would like to see, hear, blah, blah. Second is relevance, rapport, being very close to that learner, having a good relationship, close relationship, every time works, understanding, empathizing, with respect and genuineness, always works to motivate them better. I did it with many of my students, and I always saw that it works, because we should always think, as I mentioned, we are not policemen, we are teachers, we are not policewomen.
Yes.
By the way. We are teachers. So we have to know that every learner has some problems in their mind, in their
Yes.
life, in their background. That's why they cannot work. Or they can have some aims not to study. It's a clear aim, I think. About deschooling, Illich referred to that deschooling and said that some institutions do not make learners better equipped with skills. Actually, schools should be distracted, he always says. And sometimes I have some ideas close to him, but not in general. But I can say we should really respect their ideas. No matter how old they are, we should make clear our rules together, and then we should remind them about our roles. So beginning of semester is important. Apart from this relatedness, I can go back to self-determination theory, autonomy of choice, relatedness, and the third is competence. No one is motivated to do the thing that they are not good at.
I see.
I always see, for example, some of my learners, or the people I saw in our country, unfortunately, many parents want their children to be doctors.
Exactly.
One of the first points of it. But they have no talent in science, in analytical intelligence. Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, according to that. I mean, as many of us as a teacher know, our learners learn better in some ways. Every learner is really valuable, and every human being is valuable, and every learner can learn something well. I always feel myself as clever, I think, because I do something well in my life, I can say, but I was terrible at physics. So competence is an important field. Some of our learners will not be great at linguistic intelligence, linguistic aptitude.
I see.
But even if they are not good at linguistic aptitude, they can learn, because many research shows that at least everyone can come to the level of B1, B2. But after that, it is not possible for everyone, for sure, because of many reasons. Everyone can speak English, everyone can understand English, but everyone cannot get 100 from TOEFL, or cannot get 8 from IELTS. And we should expect them to get that. And no university for admission, abroad, etc., in any country, expect this. So why, as a teacher, we expect such a thing from our learners? So this theory is nice for motivation. And then second theory, I can say, about psychological way, especially, we can understand our learners' perceptions, why they don't study, why they are not motivated. Especially having a one-to-one talk, individual talk is better than group talk, classroom discussion. And then we can, after we understand their perception, we can see what their need is, and we can provide this, especially about emotion. What they would like, what they need. And the third one, if all doesn't work, there can be some psychological problems, etc., etc., we can show the result. But result, I don't mean about grades just. Result can be to show your learners that they are not improving well by showing some kind of formative assessment, for example, tools. This is another theory, and if you want to learn many more theories, I can refer you a name. I mean, Dernier.
Of course.
Zoltan Dernier is very important name for motivational theories in ESL, second language acquisition especially. So Dernier would be nice to read. And as some of our friends mentioned, self-efficacy competence is important part to motivate our learners. Always positive environment, not being a police but a teacher, empathy, respect, and genuineness. I think always works. With clear instructions and clear rules, as some of our friends mentioned.
Really, thank you. Thank you very much for this, very useful information and suggestions, Doğuş Hocam. They're really great.
I'm so sorry if they are sometimes, distracted, and I just be jumping from topic to topic. It's so much possible.
It's great.
I'm trying to do my best to be as cohesive as possible, but sometimes I lose.
It's great. The listening to you, it's something great. Really, we are listening to
So
you
much.
with
Thanks so
my
much.
ears and my eyes on you. And
Thank you very much
Doğuş
for
Hocam,
our friends to have contributed that much. Really, I was
yeah,
pretty surprised in mentally.
yeah, they are. Yeah,
I'm
I
totally
know,
fine
it's
with
really
some of
great. I'm so happy that we have interaction like that. And Doğuş Hocam, a few decades ago, the language teaching and focused on communication, but
them.
now with the interactionist point of view, and we know that involving a student in the input and output flow is essential. And however, distance learning seems mostly communicative. Do you have any suggestions to increase interaction during distance education? But
Sure.
before that, would you like to start with explaining the difference between communication and interaction?
Actually, communication is to share the information, but interaction is to affect the other, to act, to talk, to write, to affect the other, and to have a kind of counterpart, in communication as well. Of course, communication is the base part, let's say, and then we have interaction with the help of it. First of all, I can start with interaction hypothesis that I really like by Michael Long. I suggest it was written in, I think, 1990s, if I'm not wrong. Michael Long is an important SLA, second language acquisition theorist, and he came up with the idea that people learn best by interacting with each other. People learn the languages best, acquire the languages best by interacting with each other, based on Vygotsky's ideas. Vygotsky is the godfather, let's say, founder of sociocultural theory, which changed the way that we thought about learning.
Yeah.
Because according to his ZPD, zone of proximal development, all educators and teachers' ideas changed, and we shifted from behaviorist approach to social culture and more interactive approaches. And in distance language teaching, actually, this is not just for distance language education, but any kind of face-to-face education as well must be as interactive as possible. Otherwise, I always say, sometimes my students, prospective teachers, in their demonstration classes that we do in the classroom at university, instruct, lecture, but this is not teaching. Teaching means the involvement of students as much as possible, and student-based classrooms. How can we create that student-based classrooms? And maybe I can start with why we have to. For example, according to Michael Long in interaction hypothesis, he just refers to the idea that people can learn best by producing the output and getting the feedback and assessing it in their interlanguage and having it as an intake. That's why, I always like this kind of picture, let's say. There are two people and they all swap information with each other, and in their brain, here, if we call it kind of brain, they just exchange, they just construct the ideas according to their own knowledge in interlanguage, and they make it intake, so it goes inside. So that's why feedback in interaction is important, and I can start with that idea with the help of also Krashen and Meryl Swain's ideas, input theory and output theory.
And output theory.
In input theory, Krashen says that any kind of comprehensible input helps us to acquire. But then Roger Schmidt also makes a theory, like noticing hypothesis, says that no, because people, his one subject called Wes in England, who's a Japanese, talks with people, speaks English for a long time. He lives there. He's an artist, and he sees that he cannot go further than intermediate level, B2 level as a usage-based essay.
I see.
Because he understands that noticing the input is important. According to Meryl Swain, output in which the learner interacts with the other and changes what he or she says and producing, hearing the sound, and getting back in his or her own interlanguage helps us acquire the language. That's why I also support Sway. I also support output. I always tell myself like I'm into output theory rather than input theory. That's why we need to create more interactive classrooms. How can we create it, especially in distance learning? I can say that we have to create more breakout rooms in Zoom, especially. For example, in public schools, many teachers have to create breakout rooms and have to do as much group or pair work as they can. Yes, that can be really hard for classroom management, but this is another point. We have to enter into each classroom to see what they are doing. If they're talking to each other, if they are not, even if they are not, even in informal conversations, they are learning. That's what children are missing in distance learning education right now.
Yes.
I was amazed at seeing Finland's educational reform. When I read about it, I learned that Finland firstly did not focus on the classrooms itself, but rather they focused on the break times. They considered how they can make break times more useful than the class hours.
I see.
Because that's the place where learners learn from each other. The best learning happens with the help of peer interaction. That's why we are not just learning from our teachers. We should let each other to, especially for equilibrium and for constructing the knowledge. It's a necessary issue. So breakout rooms are highly suggested. And flip classroom as much as possible. And individualized settings. How can we make our classes more individualized? We have to contact our learners, especially in distance learning education, which I see the hardest point, but we have to contact our learners as individual as possible.
I see.
For example, at the beginning of the semester, even if I don't see my students, I start with doing some kinds of activities to getting their the information about who they are in detail, asking about their hobbies, asking about what they like doing. And as a male, if they are not shy, if they are sociable enough, let's say, I like also using Flipgrid. They can take some short videos about who they are. That's an interaction. That's where interaction starts. And breakout rooms, Flipgrid videos can be useful. Flipped classrooms to project-based learning, to let them do some projects as pair or group works. Just by not constraining them to do pair or group work, because sometimes they can feel that they are constrained and they can say that, oh, I don't like this pair work because I couldn't find anyone and my peer was abusing my intention, let's say, well-intentioned behaviors. That's why we should leave also kind of choice, selection to do that. And in individual-based communication, for example, we can sometimes send direct messages to our learners, or we can call them directly to understand their motivational issues, their ideas better, even in young ages, because touching our learners, just by instructing, talking about ourselves, it wouldn't be proper. Especially with the flipped classrooms, they can create some kind of projects themselves. And come up to the classroom, and as less teacher talk as possible, we should just listen to them, give some feedback, and we should make them interact with each other. Even some countries try, peer assessment about grades as well. I would like it to do, but there's a little bit problem because of being fair. In our society, there are some problems about being fair, to be honest. As a teacher, we have to show our learners to be fair, and being fair is really crucial. So that's why it could cause some problems really in our classrooms if peers assess each other, because they always grade each other higher. And apart from this, I like in group works, jigsaw group activities, because
I know.
You can assign some roles. You can assign some roles as the head, leader, speaker, and so on, because assigning some roles would be really useful for them to perform their duty better. Just leaving them to do group work may not work every time well.
I see.
Apart from this, the thing I try to remember what we can do, just like chat box and polls, like Mentimeter, poll, etc. such applications are really useful to create that interaction, because we can understand their ideas. Especially Mentimeter is really useful because they do not share their ideas directly. In classroom, in chat box, you know, some students might feel disturbed and they won't be encouraged to share their ideas. That's why it will be useful to open anonymous some kind of sharings to understand their ideas better. And we can use for language class, for example, forum discussions to improve their writing. And they can write, and also they can share, they can read something and they can give a kind of reaction essay, and they can write about each other's essay in these forum discussions and so on.
Yes.
Really useful for language classrooms, I guess, for creating interaction. Our friend also wrote something about it.
Yeah, there is a question. Is it possible to introduce one questionnaire to assess our learners' learning styles in virtual teaching? Thank you so much.
Sure.
Please.
Sure. The most common and widespread questionnaire, but you need to get, of course, permission, is by actually the founder of this theory, Rebecca Oxford's SIL, Second Language Inventory, Learner Style, Language Learner Style Inventory, SILL, it's called. That's the questionnaire, most common questionnaire you can use. Rebecca Oxford, who wrote it in 1990. And apart from that, I saw from Sarah Cottrell, who also designed a questionnaire about learning styles, learner styles, language learner styles. And Chamot and O'Malley, again in 1990, it was a kind of reaction to Rebecca Oxford. They also, if I'm not wrong, I'm not so much sure about them, but they also have a questionnaire. You can use one of them, but you need to get permission from them as well.
For that one.
But at least you can have a kind of questionnaire. Maybe you can design a questionnaire yourself by looking at their questions and so on. This is up to you for sure.
I see. Thank you very much, Doğuş Hocam. It's really, you know, listening to you is something really great, you know. I'm just listening, and when I learn that things from, it's really, you know, feeling and makes me really feeling great, really. It's great ideas and suggestions.
I feel so well. Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. And Doğuş Hocam, can I move?
Yeah,
to other questions? Sure. And so, as you know that to improve their language skills, and students need to be exposed to, you know, certain amount of input, according to many studies. And also, I think English literature is a great risk to benefit. So, how can we use literature in language teaching?
Yeah, that's my interest, also interest in literature as well. I studied literature and language in undergraduate degree, and then I changed my field to language education in PhD, and also I worked as an English teacher. That's why that was a transformation. But I was always interested in literature, and I can say, first of all, many students, we have to know that many of our learners, I'm talking about Turkey, but first of all, I have to clarify it. If I talk about Turkey, I can say that many of our learners have lots of prejudices towards literature. And that's why it wouldn't be so easy to come up with great classrooms using some literary texts. So we should be careful about some points, especially. And the first things first, criteria to select the true appropriate literary text is really important. And what are the criteria when we select the appropriate literary text? First, age. Age issue is really important. How you can find the issue for age? For example, you can even write on Goodreads, Scholastic.com, you can even write on Google and find many websites that tell the age range of that book that you will use in your classroom. And after age, level of the learners for sure is really significant. And cultural background, we have to know what the culture of our learners is. For example, Robinson Crusoe. it's really
Yes.
welcomed for any ages. But slavery, even if we can adopt it in our classrooms, we can adapt it in our classroom, we have to be careful about the theme of slavery. We have to be careful about it in depending on the culture in it. I mean, if slavery is something really harsh or something really considered, let's say, in a high degree, we should be careful about it. Cultural background, age, level of the learners, intercultural competence level also. Because by introducing some literature text, we increase our learners' intercultural competence.
Yes.
As well as that, we have to be careful about our aims. We need to set clear aims for us as a teacher and for the students, how we can do it. And I always want from my learner and from my students at university in lesson plans, and most of them fail to do that. Possible drawbacks in our lesson plans are really important. Even if we do not write any formal lesson plans, we always have to keep in mind what possible drawbacks might happen during the classroom. And while selecting the appropriate book, I recommend teachers to come up with some limited selection of materials. For example, if you conduct a novel, you can ask your students, you can make a kind of survey and ask students to choose the best novel for them, or poem. By the way, you know, I mean, in literature, when we say literature in language teaching, we refer to poem, poetry, novel, short story, films, short films, songs, and drama mainly. And so we can ask our learners, as it's more motivating, to come up with that. And I always say, as one of my students wrote here in comments before, think simply, teach simply, because many of the teachers, as far as I see, think their learners, even if their learners are young learners, they think that the literary text that they were interested in will be interesting for their learners as well, but this is not true. We have to think as simply as possible, and we can choose more basic, for example, poems, let's say, especially poetry. There's a kind of issue like this. You cannot teach English. It's a language-based approach. You cannot teach English with Shakespeare, with Edgar Allan Poe. It's not that easy. You can teach. You can improve your learners' English level if they are C1, if they are B2. But Shakespeare, in language-based class, in language teaching, it's not so easy. But if it is literature class, yes, for sure, this is something different. But rather, you should focus on language teaching, because we have three approaches in literature language teaching: language-based approach, literature as content, and literature for personal enrichment. By the way, our friends who would like to know much more about it, can look at Lazar's book. Gillian Lazar wrote about literature and language teaching. Also, Lazar is an important guidebook, I can say. I try to remember one more, but Brumfitt also is important resource.
They are important ones.
Look at this guidebook, yeah. And so when we think of this language-based approach, we always have to focus on multi-skill development in integration. You know, this is the most important point right now of also our teaching approaches. For example, in pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading steps, we can let our learners, especially in pre-reading and post-reading, we can let our learners speak as much as possible, produce the language. In while reading, we can expose them to the input generally. I mean, the general task that the outline that I can tell, how to use a novel, how to use a poem or drama or a film, we can focus on, we can integrate different skills as pre-reading activities or pre-listening activities and post-listening or reading activities. To let them create outputs. You know, I mean, they can produce the language. And another point which is important is varied learners. We always have to keep in mind that there are many varieties of learners in our classroom. So I always suggest to include 7 activities for one lesson plan, minimum 7 activities, in which you can make a role play or any kind of activities that will appeal to kinesthetic learners. Kinesthetic learners
Yes.
are really hard to deal with in our classroom, and they need to move. And they learn
Exactly.
best by moving. And that's why, apart from this, for example, for visual learners, introducing some flashcards with Quizlet, Quizzes, Kahoot, etc., such things. And for learner styles who are competitive, you can create some Kahoot or Quizzes. And for audio learners, we have to include a listening text. But when I say listening, some teachers or pre-service teachers especially consider that this is something that our other friends are reading, but this is not that. You can show the trailer of the book.
I see.
You can make them listen, or you can make them listen different text that is related to the main theme to activate their schemata in their pre-reading activities, as you know. These are the important points, I can say. And we have to create lessons as engaging as possible, which fosters autonomy and involvement, I can say, with the consideration of multi-skill development. I try to outline kind of, framework with the basics of literature and language, because this is a very broad term as well. Spectrum. Yes, that's why I will talk about it in a way.
Okay, thank you very much. And there is something is written, you are reading that one, I think, should be focused on literature courses more to know culture and language mindset. There is a question about it.
There was another question also, grammar, about grammar. I couldn't find it. Oh, yeah, it's usually learning grammar first.
Yeah, it's usually learning grammar first. I mean, it's about before we learn literature, we should learn the grammar.
No way on earth. That's always integrated.
Yes.
As I mentioned, multi-skill development. No grammar can be acquired with fill-in-the-blanks activities. That's one thing that we always criticize. Let your learners produce or expose to input to increase their grammar, and support it maybe with fill-in-the-blanks activities or such different activities to make them acquire unconsciously. And the other question, should be focused on literature courses more to know culture and language mindset. Is this a question,
or maybe just give example? I think. I mean, just an idea she mentioned here.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
students should be focused.
I can say, I think language mindset. It helps our learners to increase their awareness towards language as well as culture, because through introducing literary text in our classroom, it's really engaging, it's fun, as well as that we increase our learners' intercultural competence. Many learners have, they cannot have a perspective about the different cultures. So literary text really help them have that ideas and that skill. That's a skill. That's why it's important, I can say.
I see. Thank you, Doğuş Hocam. And Doğuş Hocam, we are almost coming end, of our sessions. But especially I can listen to you all day, the long and the night. So because your ideas, your suggestions are really great. So, and my last question is, what is your motto? I mean,
in terms of language teaching, or
in terms of, you can, if you have for general view and also language teaching.
I can say, for example, for language teaching, I can say teach them to catch fish, not to give the fish, not to feed them with the fish. I like it. Also, emphasize or deprioritize.
I see.
You have to emphasize with your learner. And my most important point is to make our learners produce. So make them produce. Make your learners produce. And another one, think simply, teach simply, and don't be policed by the teacher. There are the models.
Great one.
I always came up, thought of ideas regarding language teaching.
I see.
Now I cannot
no, it's okay. It's a great one. They're really great. The mottos that very useful that we can think about them, and we can get some the ideas from it, like the meaning of it. So okay, Doğuş Hocam, would you like to, I'm going to say the last of my words about live sessions, but would you like to add anything before we finish our live sessions tonight?
First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for listening. There were great contributions, and thank you for contributions, and thank you one more time for having invited me to these wonderful teacher talks, which really contributes to our field a lot. I think all these kind of sessions always contribute, and I was really delighted. I was pleased, and I'm so sorry if I talk a little bit more, because sometimes I cannot stop myself.
No, of course not.
That's the thing I can also tell for the listeners, for the audiences, for our friends. That's all I think I can say. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, so I would like to say also something like thank you very much, really, Doğuş Hocam. It was a great, great sessions, and I can say one of the best live sessions that we have ever so far. And so the ideas, your suggestions, they were really great and impressive. And I would like to say again, thank you for accepting my invitation and becoming my guest. And it was really an honor to have you here. And also, I would like to say a huge thank you for our listeners and the ones who joined, and they didn't leave us alone here. They came and they listened. And I'm sure that they got something from this session tonight. I'm sure that even if they get the one word from this session, it's really important, because for me this is my idea. And that's all. I would like to say that. And thank you very much again for your the great effort in tonight. And I would that's all. And I'm sure that we will have a chance to do something with another teacher talk sessions, or maybe another platform. I will be really happy about it. And I would like to say that good evening, and maybe good night, maybe good morning from where you are. And thank you very much one more time, and see you in the next Teacher Talks live sessions, and peace. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye, Doğuş Hocam.